Hi, everyone. Pastor Tim Bushong here from Syracuse Baptist Church, and I'm speaking on behalf of Eschatology Matters. I don't know if you knew this or not, but Eschatology Matters didn't start off as a YouTube channel. No, it was a conference. Brendan Wood held a conference last year, September of 2022. Well, guess what? We're going to have another one. This time it's going to be hosted by our good friend who is also speaking Friday night, Jason Gingrich. He's the pastor of Maple Grove Church in Topeka, Indiana. So, as I said, he'll be speaking Friday night, and then all day Saturday, we have a number of speakers. We have The Kingdom of God with Stephen Baker. I'll be speaking on the new creation. Jeremiah Nordier on the resurrection. Chris Barlow will be speaking on the final judgment, and my good friend Josh Howard, Christ as King. So I think you'll enjoy this. It's all available. Details on a YouTube channel and on our Facebook page. So yeah, September 8th and September 9th, Topeka, Indiana, Maple Grove Church. Look to see you there. Now, this interview I've been long wanting to have with my friend James White. James White is known for 40 years of ministry with Alpha and Omega Ministries, beginning as an apologetics group for Mormonism, then Roman Catholicism, then Islam, and now he's one of the pastors at Apologia Church in Phoenix, Arizona. So I hope you enjoy this. Hello, everyone. This is Tim Bushong for Eschatology Matters. With me today is James White. James needs no introduction, but we're going to introduce him anyway. Hi, James.
How you doing?
So it looks like you're behind the very gates of hell, but it's just the background on your video. There it goes. That's better. It was all red and scary. Now it's green.
Yeah, it's a little bit more even now. So now I'm underwater.
It looks really cool.
You're just jealous.
Well, look behind me, Minnesota Vikings. Yeah, I'm jealous.
Yeah, how many times have they won the Super Bowl?
They haven't won 4, I know that.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thanks for being on. We've been interviewing quite a few different theologians and guys that are have some visibility. And I just want to say, just like I did with Doug Wilson, I really appreciate your ministry, your service to the church, especially to me personally. And I have a couple of books here I'd like to just flash. Do you remember this one?
Yeah, that's the later cover.
Yeah.
It wasn't the original cover, yeah.
Drawn by the Father.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah, I was sitting with Jeff in Texas just a few weeks ago and said, "Man, we really need to update that thing." He said, "Yeah, I don't know. He had a stroke a few years ago. He's doing a whole lot better now, but he was real sharp when we met. But yeah,
well, he was in the same denomination as I was for a little while, and I got to meet him in 2008, and we had a real nice conversation. And so here's another one. This one just recently has been getting more traction or less traction, depending on what your perspective is. This is a good book, man.
That's actually the original edition. There's a second edition that I like that cover better, but my kids say that cover is 1990s and the current cover is more 2010s. So.
You're like, okay.
Yeah.
This book I would have with all kinds of different persuasions. The King James only controversy.
Also dating yourself, original edition. The second edition is I don't know, about 24 pages long or something like that.
Oh wow! Back in the 90s, my wife and I used to watch Law and Order. Gung gung. Yeah. That was great.
That's Chris Arnzen's title right there.
Oh yeah. Hey.
Oh yeah, he came up with that one.
Chris is a great guy.
He is.
And finally, the biggie. The one that got people pounding their fists on the dashboard.
Hey, you finally got the current edition. Yay.
Well, yeah, exactly. So yeah, I've been a Dividing Line listener for many years. That's partially what prompted me to say, hey, let's get a Radio Free Geneva theme that just kicks it, as it were. And that we're working on the video, so it'll be.
I think the previous fellow is still somewhat upset about that, but that's oh well.
You know, I actually talked with him on Facebook, and I said,
"Did you,
dude? That was really good. It just was instrumentally nice. The orchestration, but metal is king." So,
yeah, he's not a metal singer.
No.
Good old
So
Clyde.
oftentimes when you'll be talking, it just seems like we had a very similar background growing up as kids in the church, in a certain type of church, and there were like these 7 charts on the wall that everybody had to memorize. So, James, tell us a little bit about growing up in the American church in the 60s and 70s and what eschatological position that would have entailed.
Well, I know that my dad graduated from Moody Bible Institute in the middle 1950s and was GARB, General Association of Regular Baptists. And so, we'd have the Moody Bible Institute movies for New Year's Eve and the ones with the guy doing the Tesla electricity stuff and all that kind of thing. And I do remember very clearly the first time that I saw A Thief in the Night. That was, I really wonder how many people have been permanently harmed by Thief in the Night, especially the lawnmower scene, guys mowing the lawn and then the camera swings around and now that the lawnmower is just sitting there. And, if they had CGI back then, they could have done all sorts of stuff with planes falling out of the sky and stuff like that.
It was so bad. It just, the production value
it was so good. I mean, come on, that's still one of the most I think it is the most rented VHS video ever.
Oh my.
That's
good.
But we all saw all that stuff. And, I grew up with a dispensational premillennial perspective, and my dad was real firm on it, and he died really firm on it. He died last year, and in the months leading up to his death, he was still absolutely convinced that the rapture was going to happen before he died.
Mm-hmm.
And so he never went with any of my later changes in my view on that stuff. And I'm sure he was disappointed in me for having defected, I guess. But still, anyway, it was in Bible college. Well, we moved to Arizona. He had a small church for a little while out there, but that's not why we went to Arizona. And we ended up in a Southern Baptist church. And it was premillennial as well. And in fact, I do remember Grand Canyon College, where I went to college.
Yeah.
Before I went there, I knew that there was a battle going on between North Phoenix Baptist Church and the pastor there, Dr. Richard Jackson, and some of the professors at Grand Canyon, because he'd mentioned it from the pulpit. Because a lot of the kids from Grand Canyon went to North Phoenix, and North Phoenix was got up to having 20,000 members on the roll. We could never find more than 7,000 on any given Sunday, but there were 20,000 members on the roll. And so, it was the largest Southern Baptist church in Arizona, pretty much ran the Arizona Southern Baptist Convention, and Grand Canyon was an SBC school. And so there were amillennialists at Grand Canyon, and Jackson wasn't overly happy about that, and he did preach a number of sermons on the subject. So I was warned before I went to Grand Canyon that you need to be aware of these things. And I was already, to be honest with you, moving toward where I was most of my life, and that is, man, eschatology produces a lot of heat, and I don't see a whole lot of light.
Light, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in high school, I've told the story, back when you had to take the California Achievement Test, fill in the little bubble things and all the rest of that stuff before that was all discovered to be racist or something about having stolen it from indigenous peoples. I don't know what it is anymore.
I think it's the number 2 lead pencil that was the racist part.
It could be. It could be because you did have to use the number 2 lead pencil. So I remember once I had finished before everybody else, I was sitting there reading Hal Lindsey's late great Planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I've told the story many times because it's funny the things you remember. I posted a meme on Facebook. I almost never use Facebook. I detest Facebook, but I posted a meme that I had seen somebody else post. It said, "It's astonishing how clearly I can remember song lyrics in the 1980s while I can't figure out why I just walked into the kitchen."
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, it's true. And so the things you remember, I remember a lock-in. I think it was my senior year in high school, where the kids would get together, and when you have a church that big, you've got a huge youth group, which is fun. I mean, camps and stuff like that for that church were a whole lot of fun. You could have entire football games with plenty of people on both sides and the whole 9 yards. Anyway, I remember that in this lock-in, all the lights were off. And this was 1980. And I had a tritium digital watch. I've always been a geek when it comes to that kind of stuff. And it's radioactive. I mean, tritium is literally radioactive. But it would glow constantly. Yeah. And it would glow so brightly that if you put it right against the page in I had a little New Testament with me, a Soul Winner's New Testament, of course.
Yeah.
You could actually read the text. Now, of course, that print would be so small, I couldn't read it now anyways, but
don't. Yeah.
Oh man, it's horrible.
Man.
Anyway, I just remember it used to really bug me when old people would sit around and talk about all the stuff that's going wrong with their bodies, and now it's me. Can't see nothing anymore. And, oh, wait a minute, gotta go use the restroom again. It's just
never pass that opportunity up, guys.
Anyway, I remember that I was reading to them from Matthew 24 and talking about the fig tree, the parable of the fig tree. And I was informing them that Israel became a nation in 1948, and a generation is 40 years. Right. So 8 years, we've basically got 8 years. Yeah. And somebody went blowing through North Phoenix's parking lot during a service once and put that, what was it, Edgar Whisenant? Was that his name?
88 Reasons Why.
84 Reasons Why the Rapture will be in 1984 or something like that.
Then it was 88, and then he forgot to carry the 1, so it became 89. Very convenient.
And, I lost track, but every car in that parking lot had that thing stuck under the windshield wipers. Yeah. And so Jackson did a whole sermon as a result of that on that too. So again, that was just part of, I had some eschatology books. My dad bought me J. Dwight Pentecost Things to Come. That is a beast of a book. You got to admit, that looks pretty impressive. And
some of his, boy, yeah, okay,
yeah. So,
but that's the air you breathe, right?
That was where I was raised. But once I got to Grand Canyon, and I started studying under, especially Dr. D.C. Martin. Now, D.C. Martin was probably to my left in a lot of stuff. But he was just a tremendous guy. The low A in his class was a 97.
Ooh.
And
wow.
I was, as far as we know, and we talked about this because I became his colleague later on. I was, after I graduated from seminary, I was scholar in residence at Grand Canyon. So I taught there. And so we got to know each other on more of a equal basis. And just a tremendous Christian man. I'm not going to spend our time talking about that, but he was a tremendous influence in my life. And people who know him and you studied under him, when they listen to me, they'll go, you studied under DC Martin. Like, yeah, I did. I am able to hold an audience on that are not necessarily all that easy to do. And I credit a lot of that DC Martin. He was, if you wanted to learn from him, you could. I mean, he on almost any topic. He was something else. Anyway, he was an amillennialist. And I did not embrace amillennialism at that point in time. And in fact, I remember one class very, very clearly. He was making some comments about Matthew chapter 24, and I put my hand up and I said, Dr. Martin, what about, and I brought up something from my past, something from that I've been trained. And he literally said this in front of the entire class. He said, most of you are going to want to tune out for a little while now. James and I are going to have a conversation. We'll be right back. And then he started talking to me about the subject, which didn't really endear me necessarily to the rest of my students. But
Exactly.
Anyway, I came to the conclusion somewhere in there. I think it was right after I was asked to speak at a church on Mormonism. We had started dealing with Mormonism. I got married between my freshman and sophomore years of college. So I was 19,
right.
She was 18. And so I started doing the Mormonism thing just a matter of weeks after that. I mean, that was my first meeting with Mormon missionaries, and Alpha and Omega was founded the next year, 40 years ago. This coming.
Yes, happy anniversary.
Yes, thank you. I found out I was leaving before I stayed last night, and the pastor Derek Melton there. They're coming out for our anniversary.
Oh, that's cool.
What? What?
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that's I feel guilty now. Anyway, so I was starting to do Mormonism, and a Baptist church somewhere in Phoenix asked me to come and do a presentation on Mormonism. And we're sitting in the pews before it starts, and there's something in the the holder on the back of the pew. Yeah. And to be a member of that church, you had to be dispensational, premillennial, pre-tribulational.
Yep.
And I mean, it was strongly condemning anything but those perspectives. And I remember just sitting there, and I had already started to come to the conclusion, the hermeneutics and exegesis that I use in dealing with Mormons on monotheism, really basic stuff here. Yeah. A closed canon, Jesus as creator of all things. Basics. It's not the same hermeneutics that is being used in pretty much all the eschatological conversation I was hearing going on. And so I was already at the point of going, man, there's more heat than light and different hermeneutics. And so by the end of my Bible college career, I was a pan-millennialist. It'll all pan out in the end. Yeah. Okay. Now, I was that way for quite some time. And even years later, when I listened to Dr. Nichols' series presenting amillennialism out of Trinity Ministerial School.
Would that have been, was that the emphasis on this age and the age to come?
Yep. Yeah. That was, and it was cassette tapes.
Of course.
I don't remember even where I was driving. I know it included Northern Arizona.
Dude, I had the same cassette tapes. Someone gave them to me. Yep.
Oh yeah. And so I listened to that. So for quite some time, and it was long enough that a book that Soli Deo Gloria put out on Sola Scriptura, and it had chapters from all sorts of folks, R.C. Sproul, John MacArthur, myself. I had like the longest chapter on church history and stuff like that in it. And I only went to 2 Christian Bookseller Association meetings. Bethany House brought me. And one of them MacArthur was there, and because that book had just come out, so I think it was 95, 96, somewhere around there. I was actually just handing him books and stuff like that, even though I was one of the authors in the book. Nobody knew me at that point.
That's John MacArthur. Come on.
MacArthur, yeah.
I'll get your books.
So what does John do? He asks me what my eschatological perspective is.
Hot seat.
And I've got a stack of books here, and I'm having to hand them to him as there's a line of people, so it didn't strike me as, really the most interesting topic at that point in time. But I just jokingly said, I just call myself a panmillennialist. You should have seen the look he gave. It could have melted steel. I mean, it was that was a big mistake. Bad error on my part.
Here, hold my Fresca.
Yeah. It was not good.
Yeah.
So, like I said, at some point I listened to that tape series and I go, that sounds good. But I'll be honest with you, I was never passionate at all about amillennialism. And in fact, I'm not sure how you can really be passionate about amillennialism. It's really vanilla.
So let me tell you, I remember, and I tried to find it because I download MP3s. I'm old school. I don't trust the cloud. And I know I have the one where you publicly announced on the dividing line, yes, I'm an amillennial. Because people kept asking. Oh, yeah. And you kept saying, listen, I can't know everything. Everything can't be my wheelhouse, my bailiwick. Eschatology, that's just not one of the things that I am good at, right? So I remember that, and I remember you talking about this age and age to come, and you kind of let it drift on. It wasn't like a big deal. You kept dealing with I think at the time it was your book on Islam had come out around there, 13, 14.
Oh, I think it was before then.
Okay, all right.
Before then.
I'm not Algo. Come on, man.
Yeah, I think it was before then. Of course, I had a lot of books came out in the 2000s, so I don't remember which one it was. But I was never passionate about it, and even then, I bought books on amillennialism, and I'd start reading them, and I'm just like, I don't want to do this. I just don't want to. I just don't want to do this, and so I had, unfortunately, by this point, developed a disjunction between eschatology and the rest of theology. And I knew that wasn't... Now, obviously, the eschatology we're talking about is specifically in regards to mill, post-mill, all that kind of stuff. Not right. Eschatology as in judgment, resurrection, but they all are related.
Right,
and
right.
So it wasn't... I spoke against universalism at a conference. I sort of watched Chris Date going into conditionalism and annihilationism a number of years ago. And I've always said to people, I think the one subject that's one of the hardest ones to deal with that I know of almost, I don't know a half a dozen guys that can actually deal with it well, is a defense of eternal punishment. That's tough.
That is.
And most people don't realize the vast majority of New Testament scholars in the world today, if you go broad view, are conditionalists. They don't believe in any kind of eternal punishment and stuff like that. So, that's part of eschatology. So it's not that I had ignored all that stuff.
Exactly. Yep.
But when it came to this issue, postmillennialism really wasn't an option because just like theonomy, it had been presented to me in such a completely flat, non-nuanced, inaccurate,
kind of one-dimensional in a way.
Very one-dimensional. It was just sort of like, well, and most people in the 20th century said, well, postmillennialism, it died with World War II, and so I never even really gave it a second thought. Even though I started listening to Bahnsen probably 1989, I would say. I was introduced to Greg Bahnsen in 89 and actually had some personal relationship with him.
Right.
That I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful he got to do the two debates he got to do on homosexuality, because he was ahead of the curve. Remember, he wrote a book on homosexuality while all the rest of us were going, we don't want to talk about that. He saw it coming, and he got to do two debates on homosexuality on one weekend.
Yeah.
And the reason he got to do that is he had been scheduled to debate Jerry Matitix in Omaha, Nebraska that weekend. And he got me to take his place. Mm-hmm. Now, Jerry wasn't happy about that at all. But I was. And so, we only met once. And it's interesting. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but Greg's dad was a part of Jeff Neal's ordination council.
No kidding. And
I preached Jeff's ordination.
Wow.
So there are connections there.
Yeah. That's cool.
Go way back. So I'm listening to him, but again, that it's the eschatology part. Push that out. That's just some weird thing out there, and we don't have to really think about that. And the theonomy issue, hey, Westminster put out a book against it. It must be bad.
Exactly.
All that kind of stuff. And so it really wasn't, I was sort of happy to be there because amillennialism is sort of, it's the middle ground where you don't really have to be overly excited about it, but most people, that gives you when you're on the pre-mill side, people are like, oh, okay, Hal Lindsey type stuff. Post-mill side, those people are weird. Mill, okay, all right. And so it does well to just sort of stay in the middle and stay out of the line of fire. So, make a long story short, we've already made long story pretty long, actually.
Well, this is what we tuned in for. We want to hear this. So,
when the Lord did things, and they weren't easy things for me, I had been at Phoenix Reformed Baptist Church, PRBC, for 29 and a half years.
Yeah. You're not a church hopper.
I'm not a church hopper. But you can also get way too comfortable.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. You can start losing a little perspective and just get used to doing things the same way all the time and all sorts of stuff like that. Anyway, I knew that Jeff Durbin was one of those weird postmillennialists. And in fact, we had a little bit of a tussle back and forth at one point on the dividing line. Where Ken Gentry had said something, and I made a comment on the dividing line and went back and forth a few times. It's like, it's no big deal.
I was thinking of that earlier today. I remember that. Was that about your his perspective on 2 Timothy 3 in the last days?
Yep.
I remember.
Yep. Yeah. So there had been some discussion, but again, it didn't result in my reading any of Ken Gentry's books or anything. So. So again, just did not have an interest in it. Once when we landed at Apologia, Jeff was in, I think, Matthew chapter 22. And so it didn't take long for him to get to Matthew 24. And it was only when we went there, I had no desire for leadership or anything like that. We were just going to be a part of the church, which was, in hindsight, was sort of silly because I had preached there I don't know how many times before. It wasn't like I was going to be able to hide in the back pew or something.
That's right. Yeah.
Within a few months of my being there, a situation arose where literally one of the people involved was one of my former students. And I had to, Jeff asked me to get involved, and it didn't take long before we're sitting at dinner going, you're sort of already doing lots of elder stuff. And, maybe we got to just sort of make it official. Even though there are 4 elders, but I'm the only one who is not full-time with the church. I'm full-time with Omega.
Right.
So it's a balancing act. It really is a balancing act there. So anyway, when it became time to start talking about eldership, the church is confessionally postmillennial.
Really?
And so they sort of let me slide on, do you think Jesus is Jesus going to have the victory in the end? And so, I was already starting to move that direction because around, I first debated Doug in 2004.
Yeah.
And we didn't really have much communication after that. We had communication before 2004 because you may recall, I don't know. He and I had debated the textual critical issue in
Credenda.
In Credenda Agenda, right.
That's right. Yep.
In the antithesis section of Credenda Agenda.
Yeah.
And I just wiped the floor with him. But
hey,
I think I did.
I still have that copy, and I remember when the guy at my previous church, who was our full time. I've never been full time until the last 7 or 6 years here in Syracuse, but he was getting pretty jazzed up about the ecclesial text, and I'm like, no, we can't go there because it doesn't exist. And we broke that out, and I said, here's the argument. You got to deal with the arguments, not with what you want to be able to tell the people,
Right.
Oh my.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had that initially. And then we had the Federal Vision thing in Los Angeles. And
that was is the Roman Catholic my brother?
Right.
That was the official question.
Right.
Affirmative or denial. Yeah.
Right. And I don't remember the next contact, but I had started reading blog and Mablog more often and stuff like that. And so there was another way of hearing things being applied,
Right.
And so once I'm at Apologia and now I'm listening to Jeff doing just a masterful job. Now, it took him way too long, but it was a masterful job dealing with Matthew 24. I mean, it was sort of like how the Puritans did it.
There's a lot of sermons in that series.
Oh, there were a lot of sermons in that series.
Yeah.
And I would break it up a little bit. He'd have me preach something. I did. Well, I did 13 sermons on baptism, 5 sermons on the Lord's Supper and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm hearing this consistent stuff. And so it's like, okay, it's time to break out Monson and read his book on the subject. It's time to look at Ken Gentry. It's time to the film that was extremely helpful to me was On Earth as It Is in Heaven, which is sort of scary because the guy who did that film has now interviewed me twice for the continuations of that film.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of like, hey, I'm the newbie. Why are you?
Yeah.
The only reason you're interviewing me about this or anybody ever asked me about this is because I have such a huge platform for other reasons.
You've got like, 4 other stuff and now a postmillennial 1689 confessional Baptist.
Right.
Okay. We're going to leverage that, my friend.
Well, and a general equity theonomist to boot. So I've made myself.
That's where I want to go at some point. Did you get the recording I sent of our first phone call? I'd sent it on Facebook Messenger. It was about GE theonomy, believe it or not. It was back in 2014. I was saying something about, well, I'm still running, 3-5Ks a week. And you said, well, you better oil up your bike, buddy, because your knees aren't going to be able to do that. And you know what? You're right.
You know what the irony is? If that was 14, that's the same year I started running.
Yeah.
And I miss it horribly.
I do too.
It wasn't my knees that went out. It was hernias.
Mine was I've got something going on with my left foot, and my right leg has this Charlie horse that never went away, and I don't know what. I'm not going to go to a doctor and get it fixed. I walk now.
Yeah, I've started doing some walking. I'm still on bike, but yep. I can't. I'm doing less than half what I was doing in 2016. Facebook shows me these memories from 2016. I'm just sitting here going, really? How on earth did I do that? That was only 7 years ago, and it's like, wow. No. Anyway, I've offended everybody. So basically, once the question I've told people, or the ones I've told Doug this as well, there were two statements or questions two things he said that really pushed me over the edge and made me go, okay, all right, I've got to dig into Psalm 2. I've got to dig into Psalm 110. I've got to dig into Isaiah 42. I've got to dig into 1 Corinthians 15. I've got to translate all these texts. I got to do all the stuff that I should have been doing a long time ago. And they're closely related. But the one was, might we still be in the early church?
Right.
And, I've taught the first class I taught after I graduated from seminary was church history at Grand Canyon. Mm-hmm. And I'm now the professor of church history at GBTS. And so I do a lot of reading in history, not just church history. I'm right now, as I'm driving, I'm listening to a book called Race of Aces. And it's about the race to beat Rickenbacker's record during World War II. As far as the number of planes shot down. I also do history for fun. I love history. Oh, yeah. 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 Bookshelf back. Same here. In fact, just before we went on, I had just, because I'm reading the current book, I realized I have a huge gap in my Pacific War knowledge in regards to the battle in New Guinea. I know Okinawa, I know Okinawa and Iwo Jima and all the rest of that stuff, but I know almost nothing about New Guinea. And so, anyways, I have real interest in history, and so I knew that every generation has considered itself to be the last generation. And that's just been, and that's what I was taught as a premillennialist, was this, you are the last generation. This is it. And when I started thinking, what if we're still in the early church? That changes everything. Because now you're asking the question, well, what am I going to leave and build and do things you never even think about from the premillennial perspective, and the amillennial perspective doesn't drive you to do that. There's not anything that pushes you there. You can do it if you have enough postmillennial friends that you want to look cool around. But it just, I'm like, yeah, what if we are? And then in association with that, it was, you never hear Christians talking about preparing for their great-grandchildren. Right. And building for their great-grandchildren. And he was right. I was not raised to think forwardly like that at all. And now at my age, I look back and go, man, I would have done a number of things very differently. Yeah. If I had the perspectives then that I have now. I really, really would have. And so I dig into the text, and I'm looking at, this is how I've explained it, because because I've done 181 moderated public debates, everybody figures, oh, you're going to be debating eschatology. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not. I don't have any interest in it. And one of the primary reasons that I don't have any interest in it is how I got here was not I call it down in the weeds stuff that was so fascinating back in 1980, where you're watching the development of the European Union, and there's 10 nations, and there's a 10-headed beast in Revelation, and you're, I wonder if that has something to do with Daniel, and you're down here, and you're doing all this this stuff with all these questions and how does this relate to that? Could this term refer to that term? And all this kind of stuff. I came to postmillennialism from top down.
Yeah.
And so I realized there's all sorts of stuff down here. I don't have enough years to get to it. I don't have enough interest to get to it. I started at the top, and I'm looking at the key texts and realizing all these key texts are central to Reformed theology as a whole, to Trinitarian theology, to an understanding of the relationship Father, Son, and Spirit and what they're doing. I mean, Psalm 110:1, that Jeff said that's God's favorite Bible verse because it's quoted more often than any other.
It keeps showing up.
I'm sorry?
It keeps showing up. There it is. There it is. There it is.
And so you look at Psalm 110 and you look at what it's saying, and then you see Psalm 2, and these are clearly messianic. They're used that way in the New Testament, and they are tied in at the top level of what God is doing in this world, and then they're tied into texts like 1 Corinthians chapter 15. He must reign. I should have put on my I've been wearing very often, I've got about 5 of them in the back of this RV. I have in Greek, it is necessary for him to reign.
Oh, cool.
Until every enemy be put under his feet. And where
can I get mine? Because that is nice.
I've had a few people ask me that, but I just made them on Zazzle, and I don't even know that I've made it public. I suppose I should. I could. I don't know. Make all of 39 cents or something like that on it. But I just put and it's in unsealed Greek text, which throws a lot of people off. Very, very few, even seminary graduates, can read unsealed. We're taught to read modern form Greek in seminary, and I did so much work on P45 that I read Magistrate very easily, and so I put it in Magic because it looks so much cooler. It really does. Anyway, I should have worn it. I apologize for that. But I'm starting to look at these texts and I'm going, man, this ties in at the very top. It's up here, and I had always viewed eschatology as sort of just a sideshow. But postmillennialism is not a sideshow. It is tied in at the very top with, will the Son, the Father says to the Son, ask and I will give you the nations as your inheritance.
Exactly. Those texts should be, because everyone prioritizes in some method or another. And just like with provisionists, they're going to prioritize their wishy stuff.
Did you have to ruin this entire interview?
I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
Could you cut that out later or something? Because I was having a good time. So
that was fun up until you ruined our whole day. Yeah. Those should be the overriding text. Because, again, if you're thinking in broad Genesis to Revelation categories, it starts off with, okay, Adam, take dominion. And then he fails. And here Jesus succeeds. And Jesus says, I have all the authority. Go take dominion and I'll be with you the whole way through. And how do you ask the salient point, the consistent application of those passages from the apostles? What did they think about it? They're not sideline stuff. This is central.
It's central stuff, and it's tied in with the relationship Father, Son, and Spirit.
Yep.
And it's tied in. If you're a synergistic free will person, you can't go here, because you have to actually believe that, yes, God could connect nations. God could draw the large majority of mankind to obedience to Jesus Christ. And as long as you're in that's all up to the free will of man thing, give it up. You're not going to be able to go there. Right. And I had to ask myself the question, if you believe that God is sovereign in the matter of election and salvation, why couldn't he bring a massive work of the Spirit in the future? And of course, as an amillennialist, I had spiritualized all of that. And so, this is all fulfilled in the church. It's all spiritual. And there is in the premillennial perspective, in the millennium, you get Christ reigning in an earthly sphere, but it's sort of in this, I don't know. I never, when you think about what it's going to be like during the millennium as a premillennialist, that's not really like earthly life. It's not like, it's no connection to where we are now. It's after the rapture and after all this stuff has happened, and it's sort of like just the temporary spot you go to before heaven.
Well, yeah, and you don't want to misrepresent, but I often thought of it, after I kind of went through my own pilgrimage here, I thought, well, wait a minute. So you've got the mortals living among the immortals. But is that what we're looking for? Is that what the Bible says about, like Isaiah 62, 100 years? I think it's 62, 63. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Right.
Still death, right? And they would say, well, what about that? I'm like, yeah, what about that? That's not the eternal state. So you're talking about something that obviously you're getting from one chapter of the Bible, the most symbolic, highly typological book we have, and you're going to ground everything right there. There's the found. And then when you read Psalm 110, I literally had a guy tell me, oh no, the ruling with the rod of iron, Psalm 2, that's only after the great apostasy. I'm like,
right.
That's not what Peter thought.
No, not at all. It's not. And then I think it was probably when I was challenged to look at Daniel 7 and go, so when does that happen? When is the Son of Man presented before the Ancient of Days? And when I heard it being presented as this is his enthronement after the ascension, I'm like, wow, this is all up here. And I was raised, I don't think I ever heard a sermon on the ascension.
That is dude, exactly. That's the evangelical black hole. You just don't talk about it. You don't think about it.
No one ever talks about it.
You don't even conceive it.
No, I was asked, I don't even remember what kind of a church it was, but I think it was on Long Island or in New Jersey, one of the two, somewhere around there. I was asked to preach a sermon on the Ascension because it was Ascension Sundays. This was somewhat of a liturgical church.
Right.
And I'm sitting here going, okay, I've never heard a sermon on this subject. I don't even know where to start. Right. It's just like completely, as you call it, a black hole. It's just not there unless you start realizing, hey, when Christ ascends to heaven in my youth, it was like, okay, I'll see y'all later in 2,000 years. Y'all have a good old time. I'm going to send the Spirit down to do some stuff, but later, and the idea of rulership, lordship, all authority is given to me, nothing there at all. Right. But then you start seeing how the apostles are doing the Psalm 110, Daniel 7, Jesus
yes,
the Psalm 110, Daniel 7 thing.
Yeah. And
the high priest is ripping his robe, and you've heard the blasphemy, and it all just comes together. And I know that Doug and I discussed it on one of the Sort of Us dialogues, which just drives people insane. It is amazing. I mean, my daughter, you probably know something about Summer.
Yeah.
She had Doug on Theologians to talk about a book about food. Because Doug writes on everything. Okay, let's just admit. And I guess he did something on food. I don't even know what it was. And she had him on, and oh my goodness, there truly is such a thing as Doug Wilson derangement syndrome. There really, there's James White derangement syndrome, but it's not nearly as fatal as Doug Wilson derangement syndromes. So when he and I have these friendly conversations, where almost inevitably we get to the end and it's like, wow, we weren't as far apart as we thought we were. And that's what happens when you talk it out and you can define terms and things like that. But, he's more than happy to have a conversation with someone who doesn't agree with him,
Sure.
Isn't that nice? When we do that kind of thing, people just lose their minds. And one of the things that was said in one of those conversations, and he's said this in movies and stuff like that, was basically becoming a postmillennialist is fun. It's exciting. It's not like the other eschatologies where it's just sort of like, well, this is how it all falls apart. Everybody
right. Well, there's a reason that it's called an optimistic eschatology. And right. I know the pre-guys don't like to hear that. I'm optimistic that Jesus, when he did that recently in the On Mill stuff. And here's a funny thing. When I first saw the Is the Roman Catholic my brother debate, and then I kept, I would listen to the Dividing Line. I was in the same denomination as Doug. I'd read his stuff. I thought these guys are not that far apart. In fact, there should be some rapprochement here to try to get the dialogue back. And I was literally praying that you guys would hook up in that way. And I've told Doug that. I think I've told you that. I said, this is an answer to my prayers. This is cool,
Yeah, it is.
And, if you're going to get the most, I guess, hyper covenantal of the covenant Presbyterian denominations and a Reformed Baptist together sitting around the table with their sweaters, I thought maybe I'd add a little to the Coogee thing, but I don't know what that is you've got on. But no, this has been an answer to prayer, and I'm grateful for it. I think it's cool. Yeah.
Well, and he has been great help to me in that area, and I agree with him. I was excited about my premillennialism only because it allowed me to amaze my friends at church with the fact we only had 8 years to go before the rapture. It would allow you to watch the news and go, ooh, I wonder if look at that. That's totally different than the excitement that you have as a postmillennialist in the sense of the drive to be building, investing in the future. That's totally different context.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And so I appreciated, the fact he says, hey, yeah, this is, of all the paradigm shifts that he has had over his life, he said, this is the most fun. And he says it with that smile and that laugh that you can't help but go, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is fun.
Well, that's interesting because, when most people think about, like you said, the heat that's generated by eschatological debates, in the recent, I'd say around 15 years, there's been a bit of a paradigm from that earlier model, best-selling book, Late Great Planet Earth, all that stuff. And I understand people being loyal to their seminary professors, even their families who are so staunch in that. It still baffles me that churches will have that as part of your church covenant. You have to agree to this or you can't join our church and all that. So there is a blessed inconsistency. If you remember in the early 80s, the folks trying to make some kind of civic move were generally dispensationalists.
Right.
Tim LaHaye, Jerry Falwell, Pat Robertson.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right. However, what you said about being excited about planting seeds that are going to grow and be watered and fertilized and then grow up to be the next generation. I've seen, you probably haven't seen pictures of, I'll send you some of our church. There's a bunch of little kids. They're going to be taking on their own battles. As you've said for years, everyone has to own this for themselves. You can't just stand on shoulders of giants, even though we all do. That's not enough. You need to internalize it, grow. So how do you see, let me ask you this, because now that you're a card-carrying bona fide post-millennial.
I haven't gotten my card yet. Who's supposed to send that to me? Who signs it?
It comes from Canon Press. I'm going to tell you that right now. Well, but I think Apologia should
start. They haven't sent me my card yet. I'm sort of sad because I'm not getting my discounts.
I think Apologia Church should start making cards. That would be cool. So how do you see it? Because you're an elder in a church. Like you said, you were brought in on sounds like a case where you had to counsel and maybe discipline somebody. Do you see postmillennialism making not just a difference, but a quality way that you approach bringing people along in the faith, sanctification, as a pastor? Has there been much of a shift there since the embracing of postmillennialism?
Well, see, it was already the clear and obvious position at Apologia to begin with. So it wasn't that we were introducing something, and it is, I think, given the highly public nature of Apologia, End Abortion Now, the whole shift that has taken place, for example, from the abolitionist movement in the early 2000s, which was anti-church and all the rest of this stuff.
I remember that.
The main people
protesting.
Protesting outside of churches when I was speaking there.
Right.
One of the main people that changed all of that was Jeff Durbin.
Yeah.
I mean, he really did. And so anybody at Apologia already knows this is what we're about. This is where we're going. And there is, I think, I certainly saw it in 2020 when everybody shut down, including Grace Community Church. We didn't. And there were almost, I could count on one hand the number of churches in all of Phoenix that did not shut down initially. And in fact, we actually lost, because we rent our facility. We lost the use of that. And thankfully, there was another church, which would not be postmillennial, that also stayed open. And so we started meeting there in the afternoons. And so the point was there was a unity that we had, and our postmillennialism was part of our unity. It was part of what brought us together and kept us unified. Our focus upon the regular celebration of the Lord's Supper and the preaching of the word and the ministries that we continued to push forward in, the Planned Parenthood hates us. If you've got a Planned Parenthood clinic in the Phoenix area, you know us because we're there all the time. You can't get away from us. And I see it as part of what motivates and holds us together. There is regularly in the sermons, we're talking, it's a family integrated church. And so, the first 2 weeks I was there was a little tough.
You got to get used to that noise level.
Level.
The interruptions.
Astonishing. Oh man, they're just children. I mean, there are baby showers every week.
Aren't they glorious interruptions though?
Well, I mean, but after 2 weeks, I don't hear it anymore.
Right. Right.
You can learn to. That's the kids. You don't worry about it. You go on from there.
Yeah.
But that's part of that postmillennial hope, that looking toward the future.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the average in our church is, but I would bet the average is probably between 5 and 6, because we've got some 9, 10, and 11ers. Kids go in our fellowship, and so summer's up to 5 now. So yeah, it does have an impact. It really, really does.
Yeah.
And because I think it's because it's not considered this thing over here someplace. You know, it's out here somewhere. It's it's something that we see having a much more central relationship, because like I said, you start at the top, and this is the Father, this is the Son, here is Psalm 2, here is kiss the Son, here is give you the nations inheritance, your enthroned power, expression of lordship, kingship, and it can't just be purely spiritual.
That's right.
And and I've said to my millennials friends, hey, look, if you end up being right, more power to you. I please don't kick me out of the kingdom. I'm not going to kick you out of the kingdom.
Right.
It just seems to me that to limit the fulfillment of what Christ says regarding his reigning power to just the spiritual realm, where the world is just spiraling down the toity, and it just, it doesn't seem to, all authority is given to me, but I'm not going to do much about it.
That's why I use the phrase when I ask people, do you believe that the gospel will be victorious in human history? Because everybody wants to put it out there, either in the millennium or to our on-mill friends. On paper, you're saying that the growth of the kingdom is also matched by the growth of the enemy's kingdom, where when I read Matthew 23, it's, no, the yeast infects the whole lump of dough. So where you once had a, future wallpaper paste, now it's a living thing that you got to punch down because it's, flour and water. It's the analogy. So it sounds to me like the worldview at Apologia Church, not only being affected and grounded in Reformed theology, because that affects how you present the gospel, you are also talking about the nature of the kingdom because of postmillennialism. And I think that's where my partner in crime here on Eschatology Matters, here we already discussed the 6 things that shouldn't divide post-mills and on-mills. Well, number 7 is the nature of the kingdom. And that's, like you say, I just can't imagine Jesus, all authority in heaven and on earth, but not at the sheriff's office and not anywhere else. No.
Right. If you want to see a real application of it, when we had the opportunity to do it, they eventually got sick and tired of it, and so it doesn't really happen much anymore. But you can go online, you can see where Apologia has gone to the Phoenix City Council. Testified before the Phoenix City Council. And of course, back in January, I preached 3 out of 4 Sundays in January because Jeff was flying state after state where bills of abolition and equal protection were being put in. And if you've seen him testifying before these very aggressively nasty state legislators and stuff like that, and he is just so stinking calm and so stinking focused. He credits me with so much teaching him and training him and stuff like that. Well, okay, I'll accept that, but the reality is, we just did a debate last month in Salt Lake City. Yeah, and you may have seen the first debate that Jeff and I did together. It's infamously known as the antifreeze debate.
What was the topic of that? I know I've seen it.
Well, it was on the existence of God. Does the triune God of Scripture exist? Something along those lines. Yeah. And that atheist guy, wow, he was something else. He really, really was. Anyway, but we had done that debate together, which was very enjoyable. And then we were supposed to do this debate 6 months later, and then COVID hit. Yeah. And Americans dived into their bunkers and stayed there for a long, long time. So this ended up being 3 years later. He and I get this opportunity to do, is God necessary for ethics? Can you have ethics without God? I forget what the exact thing was. And the night before the debate, the debate was on a Saturday at the University of Utah. The night before the debate, Jeff's mom's lung collapsed. Now, there had been a alienation. They didn't support him in ministry and stuff like that. And so there was communication and contact happening that hasn't happened for a very, very long time. And her lung has just collapsed. He knows it doesn't look good. He's already changed his flight, but because of a storm coming in, he can't get back out Sunday morning. He would have had every excuse in the world to sort of be MIA in that debate. But if you've watched the debate, he was absolutely on fire. I mean, I let him do a lot of the talking, partly because he was closer to the other guys, and the older of the other two guys, you can hear him on the recording because we had a microphone on him, but that wasn't going through the speakers, which were really bad at the university. And it was just difficult for me to even hear him. So there was a physical reason why it was easier for Jeff closer to hear them and hence to interact with them more quickly. But like, I let him have the closing statement and stuff because he was just firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
And it's just so, it's just means a lot to me these days as I'm traveling 40 years in ministry now. You're starting to see all the fruit of that in these this next generation coming up. He's 16 years younger than I am. So it's exciting to see it. And so his postmillennialism and his presuppositionalism is what allows him to stand in those positions in front of legislatures and stuff like that and boldly proclaim to them the fact that they are under the authority of Christ.
Right.
And Christ says to them, they will be judged, and these are human lives that must be protected. And that's not what the pro-life movement does. The pro-life movement does not like Jeff Durbin at all.
Let me tell you
that they're our biggest enemy in the state legislatures. They shot down our stuff in Louisiana last year. We had the votes.
When my kids heard that the opposition to these bills was coming from that, because for a while they're like, well, we can still work with those folks, right? I'm like, I would love to. However, where's the opposition coming from? I attended the National SBC convention in 21. That's where I met Jeff. I went up and introduced myself.
And that's where he got COVID.
Hey, I didn't do it. And after the vote was taken on Bill Askell's abolition motion, and they added a word, and I walked out, and there's Jeff, and I said, they just eviscerated everything. And he goes, no more teeth. You can't have teeth.
Yep.
I was like, yeah. Well, I don't, we could go on, but I don't want to presume on your time, James. I really appreciate you talking with us and sharing your pilgrimage to to postmillennialism.
Well, like I said, if it's the dark side, it's a very enjoyable dark side.
Absolutely.
And people just don't seem to understand that. But like I said, if I were to summarize it all up, I would just simply say, for me, the issue really is starting at the top, seeing the relationship of these key texts as the apostles tied them into everything. I mean, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, the resurrection, the whole intention of redemption, the whole outworking of God's purpose and everything is laid out in that chapter.
Yeah.
You start up there with the clear stuff and move down toward the weeds. Whereas most eschatological conversation, it's all down here. You never get up here to have that consistency.
Yeah.
And that's truly problematic. So there you go.
Well, I think that the evident life at Apologia, I'll just tell you this. When I came to this little country church, had 11 people. Now we can't fit people in anymore. And it's just been solid, reformed. And how many times do people hear the phrase, and God, we're looking forward to the day when the knowledge of the earth covers, the knowledge of the Lord covers the earth as the waters cover the seas. And you hear those phrases over and over. And I think I almost feel sorry for the next generation of progressives and atheists that have to take on the kids from these kind of churches. Almost. Well, hey, thanks again, James. I really appreciate it. And I hope it was fun for you. Everyone, go to Alpha and Omega Ministries. That's aomin.org. Watch The Dividing Line. And man, look forward and work for the day when the knowledge of the Lord covers the earth as the waters cover the seas. Amen. Thanks again.